without a whimper,
Okay.
you know. On the other hand, she's a very, very tender soul, and this is a very mean environment.
The screen flickers to life, but it doesn't feel like just another episode of Sister Wives. No, this feels heavier, darker, and far more unsettling than anything that has come before. Season 20 promised chaos, but episode 2 delivered something else entirely. The complete unmasking of a family stripped down to its pain, its betrayals, its broken promises. Gone were the days of carefully crafted narratives and shiny montages of family barbecues. What fans witnessed instead was raw, unfiltered devastation. Decades of tension snapping under the unbearable weight of truth. The first image sets the tone. Janelle sitting in her kitchen, motionless, the faint hum of her coffee maker filling the silence like a dirge. It wasn't the picture of domestic calm that it might have been years ago, when she played the steady, rational balance to Cody's erratic energy. No, this was something else. The camera lingered deliberately, forcing the audience to sit in that silence, to feel the absence, to recognize the crushing reality of a woman abandoned, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually, existentially. Janelle didn't need to speak for her grief to be palpable. Her solitude screamed louder than words. And then she did speak. A confession, soft but thunderous. I don't even know who Cody is anymore. That single sentence cut through the air like lightning, sparking an explosion across fan forums, social media, and living rooms everywhere. Because Janelle wasn't just expressing anger. She was naming something deeper, more terrifying. The realization that the man she had built her life around, the man she had defended, negotiated with, sacrificed for, had transformed into a stranger. And in that moment, Janelle was every woman who had ever woken up one day and realized the partner beside her was no longer someone she could recognize. It was universal and it was heartbreaking. But the quiet didn't last. The calm shattered when Cody stormed into frame. His presence was a thunderclap, his body radiating fury before a single word left his mouth. His energy was tight, twitching with barely restrained rage, and when he finally opened his mouth, the venom poured out. He pounded the table, his voice rising, his accusations spilling. You poisoned them against me. You've been undermining me for years. It was a scene that fans would later call one of the most disturbing in the show's history, not because of physical violence, but because of the psychological violence dripping from every syllable. Cody wasn't arguing for reconciliation. He wasn't pleading for understanding. He was demanding control, clawing to maintain a grip on a reality that had already slipped away. His fury wasn't about loss. It was about exposure. And then came Janelle's moment. She didn't yell back. She didn't break. She crossed her arms, her face cold and resolute, and she delivered the line that would echo across Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok within minutes of airing. I'm done yelling. If you want to scream, scream alone. That wasn't just a clapback. It was a declaration of war. A woman drawing a line in the sand after decades of swallowing her voice. The audience felt the shift, the air crackling with the undeniable truth. Janelle was no longer afraid. And in that instant the balance of power tilted. But this episode was not just about confrontation, it was about contrast. For where Cody embodied chaos, rage, and decay, Christine embodied light, joy, and rebirth. The scene pivoted to her new home, glowing with warmth and laughter as she organized a gathering. The juxtaposition was stark. Christine didn't just appear on screen, she radiated. Her life, once crushed under Cody's thumb, now bloomed freely. She wasn't haunted, she wasn't broken. She was alive in a way fans had never seen before. And when she extended an invitation to Janelle and Meri, it was more than just a casual get-together. It was historic. For years, Cody's manipulation had kept the women divided, pitting them against each other with whispered accusations, favoritism, and false narratives of loyalty. But in that living room, Christine, Janelle, and Meri sat together, not as rivals but as allies. They laughed. They reminisced. They told the truth. And in doing so they rewrote the entire dynamic of the show. The camera caught Meri's face in particular and fans were stunned. This was the woman who had held on the longest, clinging desperately to the ruins of her marriage, swallowing humiliation after humiliation, isolation after isolation. Yet here for the first time in years she looked lighter. Not bitter. Not sarcastic. But genuinely lighter, as if a burden had finally slipped off her shoulders. And when Christine shared how happy she was, When Janelle confessed that she finally felt free, Meri didn't flinch. She smiled. It was small. It was subtle. But it was seismic. But just as viewers were celebrating this unexpected unity, the episode detonated its most shocking bomb, Robyn's confession. For over a decade, Robyn had been painted as the favorite, the protected one, the wife who stood unwaveringly by Cody's side no matter how destructive his behavior became. She had been the lightning rod of fan resentment, the symbol of Cody's obsession and the wedge between the family. Yet here she was, crying, unraveling, her defenses stripped away. Through sobs, she admitted that even she no longer recognized the man she had married. Robyn confessed her terror, not just for herself but for her children. She admitted that Cody's rage, his bitterness, his obsession had poisoned not just his relationship with his other wives, but with her and their kids as well. For the first time, the audience saw cracks in the fortress she had built around their marriage. For the first time, even Robyn feared the toxicity consuming their family. It was a moment that silenced even her harshest critics. Because if Robyn, the loyalist, the enabler, the so-called queen, was admitting fear, then the collapse wasn't speculation. It was undeniable. The house of cards had fallen. But perhaps the most devastating voices of all came not from the wives, but from the children. Gabriel, his face tight with pain, said bluntly, "I don't think he cares enough to try." It was the kind of raw honesty that no editing trick could fabricate, the words of a son abandoned by a father who had chosen rage over reconciliation. Then came Isabel, her voice steady but sharp enough to draw blood. "I'm done waiting for him to care." Those two sentences, spoken by children who had once adored their father, cut deeper than anything Janelle, Christine, or even Robyn could say. Because this wasn't about marriage anymore. This wasn't about plural wives, polygamy, or contracts with TLC. This was about children who had been left behind, who no longer believed in the man who was supposed to protect them. And no amount of Cody's confessional excuses, his ranting about lies and manipulation, could drown out their truth. The editing made sure of it. By the time the episode drew toward its climax, the lines were clear. Cody raged alone, flailing against shadows of his own making, while the wives and children carved out something new, something separate, something free. Janelle cried, not from despair but from the release of finally letting go. Christine beamed, her joy spilling into the room as she spoke of her wedding to David Woolley. And Meri? He smiled. The silence that lingered after Isabel's words was deafening. "I'm done waiting for him to care." It wasn't just a daughter's disappointment. It was a funeral bell for Cody's role as a father. A line drawn in stone, echoing across the living rooms of millions who watched, many of whom saw their own fractured families reflected in the raw pain of those children. And in that silence, Cody's voice, when it returned, sounded like a ghost. Detached. Bitter. Paranoid. In his confessional, Cody tried to rewrite the narrative. He ranted, pacing, veins tight in his neck as he accused his children of being brainwashed by their mothers. "They don't think for themselves anymore," he spat, eyes wild. "They've been fed lies. I'm the victim here." But the editing was merciless. His words played over footage of Gabriel's trembling jaw, over Isabel's steady defiance, over Janelle wiping tears from her eyes. The contrast was brutal. While Cody spun delusions, his children embodied truth. While he played the martyr, they bore the scars. Viewers didn't need to be told who was lying. They could feel it. And perhaps that was the most damning part of all. Cody no longer sounded like a father. He sounded like a man clinging to power. He sounded like someone who needed an enemy more than he needed a family. He sounded like a leader without followers, a patriarch without a household, a man shouting into an empty canyon, waiting for an echo that would never come. Meanwhile, the wives, those women he had once wielded against each other like weapons, were finding each other again. At Christine's house, the energy was startling in its contrast to Cody's tirades. Laughter spilled through the kitchen as Christine stirred a pot, as Janelle leaned against the counter sipping tea, as Meri tentatively joined in, her laughter rusty but real. The camera lingered on their faces, on the glances exchanged between women who had once eyed each other with suspicion, jealousy, and exhaustion. Those old wounds hadn't disappeared, but they no longer defined them. For years, Cody's manipulation thrived on division. He whispered to one wife about the shortcomings of another. He dangled affection like currency, rewarding obedience and punishing dissent. He crafted a system where loyalty to him meant betrayal of each other. But now, without him in the room, the spell broke. They were no longer rivals orbiting his moods. They were women rediscovering their sisterhood. Christine's joy became a lighthouse in that moment. She spoke with radiant pride about her upcoming wedding to David Woolley, her voice soft yet strong. "This is my new beginning, but I don't want to leave you behind. You're part of my story, and I want you to be part of my future too." The words landed like a thunderclap. Fans online later called it the speech that ended Sister Wives and began something else entirely. Because in that declaration, Christine rewrote everything. For decades, the wives' lives had revolved around Cody, his schedule, his moods, his rules. But now the axis had shifted. Christine wasn't just moving forward. She was inviting the others to join her, not as wives of Cody but as women, as friends, as survivors. The camera cut to Meri, and again her smile stole the moment. Not sarcastic. Not bitter. Not guarded. A real smile, soft and full of something almost forgotten. Hope. For years, Meri had been cast as the tragic figure, the discarded wife who couldn't let go. But in that moment she looked like someone ready to step into the sun. And fans felt it. Twitter buzzed. TikTok flooded with edits of her smile. Reddit lit up with speculation. Is this the moment Meri finally walks away? But if the wives were finding light, Cody was spiraling into darkness. In his own home, cameras caught him pacing like a caged animal, ranting to Robyn, his paranoia boiling over. He spoke of betrayal, of conspiracies, of enemies in his own household. "They want to destroy me," he seethed. "They've turned even you against me." And Robyn, once the shield, the enabler, the unwavering defender, looked shattered. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I don't recognize you anymore." For the first time, Cody's fortress cracked from within. His favorite wife, the one who had stood by him through every storm, now looked at him with fear. And for viewers it was shocking. Because if Robyn was breaking, if even she could no longer excuse his rage, then what was left? The children's voices returned, haunting the narrative. Gabriel confessed how he stopped expecting phone calls, stopped waiting for his dad to reach out. "I learned it was easier not to hope," he said, his eyes wet. And those words broke something in the audience. Not just a son giving up on a father, but a child teaching himself to live without love. Isabel echoed the same. "It hurts less when you stop expecting him to care." Their words weren't just personal. They were universal. The cry of children everywhere abandoned by parents who chose ego over empathy. The tension crescendoed with Janelle's breakdown. But it wasn't the sobs of a woman mourning her marriage. It was the release of someone finally done carrying the weight of someone else's failures. Her tears streamed as she choked out, "I'm finished fighting for a man who won't fight for his family." And when that scene aired, it exploded online. TikTok montages, Twitter hashtags, Reddit threads. It became the defining line of the episode. A battle cry, a liberation. And then the final blow. Christine's living room filled with laughter again as she teased details of her wedding, her joy radiant and unstoppable. Janelle raised a toast, Meri smiled, and for one fleeting moment, the air was filled with something the Brown family hadn't known in years. Peace. But the peace wasn't tied to Cody. It existed without him. It existed because he wasn't there. And that was the revolution. Episode 2 didn't just reveal cracks. It showed a complete collapse. Cody was left screaming into the void, his children walking away, his wives finding strength together, and even Robyn trembling at the wreckage. The power had shifted, the story had changed, and the man who once claimed to be the center of it all was now a shadow on the sidelines. And as the credits rolled, one truth rang louder than any confessional, louder than any fight, louder than Cody's rage. The wives were no longer his wives. They were women breaking free. The sun dipped low over Coyote Pass, painting the jagged land in tones of fire and shadow. To Cody, this stretch of earth had always been more than property. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of his legacy, the foundation of a sprawling empire where his wives and children would build homes, raise families, and prove the triumph of his vision. He had sold it as a dream, their dream. But by the time the cameras returned to Coyote Pass in episode 2, it no longer looked like a dream. It looked like a graveyard. Weeds curled up through the soil. Stakes once meant to mark homes now leaned in the wind, forgotten and half-buried. And as the family gathered there, the air was suffocating. This wasn't just a family meeting. This was a reckoning. Janelle stood stiffly, her arms folded, her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the land. 4 years she had fought to make this dream a reality. She had believed in the land more than anyone else, pouring hope into the soil even when it was clear that the family was fracturing. But now her face told a different story. This wasn't her dream anymore. It was her proof of the years she had wasted fighting for a man who couldn't even fight for his children. Christine arrived with David Woolley at her side, radiant, glowing in her new love, the contrast so sharp it cut the air in two. She wasn't here to invest in the land or the vision. She was here to witness the end. And Meri, quieter than the others, walked the dirt with a heavy stillness, her every step symbolic. For her, this ground wasn't just broken earth. It was broken promises. And then Cody arrived. His energy was electric, but not the kind that fuels life. It was the kind that sparks fires in dry brush, dangerous and destructive. His jaw was tight, his fists clenching and unclenching as he launched into a monologue about betrayal, loyalty, and legacy. His voice cracked the silence. This was supposed to be our future. You've all destroyed it. But no one flinched. Not Janelle. Not Christine. Not Meri. Janelle shot back with a calm fury that sliced deeper than his yelling. You destroyed it, Cody. You destroyed it when you chose anger over love, control over compassion. The line hit like a thunderclap. Even Robyn, standing off to the side, tears welling, didn't defend him. For the first time in Sister Wives history, Cody was outnumbered not by silence but by truth. His words, once gospel in this family, now sounded like nonsense echoing across dead soil. And then, just when the tension reached its peak, the twist came. Janelle revealed she had received an email. A strange, desperate message from a woman claiming she wanted to join their family. First it sounded absurd. Out of place. Almost laughable. But as Janelle read the words aloud, the tone shifted. The email was pleading, obsessive, and unsettling. The woman claimed she was called to be part of the Browns, that she believed Cody was destined to be her husband, that she could bring healing to a fractured family. Christine's face twisted in disbelief. Meri muttered under her breath, unbelievable. And Janelle, her voice steady, asked the question that hung over everything. Did you know about this, Cody? The cameras caught it. The flicker in his eyes, the tightening of his lips. He denied it, of course. He called it ridiculous. A prank. But his denial rang hollow. Because his wives knew him. They knew the glint in his eye when temptation brushed against his ego. They knew the hunger in him for control, for adoration, for someone to look at him as the center of the universe again. And in that moment the thought became unbearable. Maybe Cody hadn't just let the family collapse. Maybe he had been preparing to replace them. Fans exploded online the second this scene aired. Threads lit up with speculation. Who was the woman? Did Cody encourage this? Was this his secret plan all along? Theories swirled, memes multiplied, and hashtags like hashtag Coyote Pass Showdown and hashtag New Wife Email trended within hours. Because this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a scandal unraveling in real time. And while Cody tried to dismiss it, his desperation showed. He ranted about loyalty. He screamed about betrayal. He accused the women of conspiring against him, of trying to strip him of everything he had built. But the more he screamed, the smaller he looked. Because no one was listening anymore. The wives exchanged glances, silent but united. Even Robyn, trembling, didn't step forward to shield him. He was for the first time truly alone. Behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Insiders claimed TLC executives were divided. Some argued this was the most explosive content the show had ever captured. The kind of scandal that could keep viewers hooked for seasons. Others worried it had gone too far, that the story was no longer about a family but about a man unraveling on national television. Rumors spread that producers were already floating spin-off concepts, centering on Christine, Janelle, and Meri, while quietly phasing Cody out. And fans could feel it. Episode 2 wasn't just television. It was history in the making. The patriarch was collapsing. The wives were uniting. The children were exposing the wounds. And a mysterious email, strange and unsettling, dangled a final insult over the ruins of Coyote Pass. The suggestion that Cody could ever replace what he had destroyed. By the end of the Coyote Pass showdown, the symbolism was undeniable. The land Cody once promised would unite them was now the stage of their final fracture. His dream was dead, his authority crumbled, and the women walked away not defeated but free. And Cody? He stood in the dirt, raging against a storm of his own making. The studio lights burned hot. The confessional chairs, once symbols of safe storytelling, now felt like interrogation seats. The producers knew it. The wives knew it. And Cody knew it too. Robyn was the first to sit down. For years she had been the polished voice of reason on camera, the tearful wife who spoke of unity while chaos brewed beneath the surface. But this time her composure faltered. Her face was blotchy, her mascara smudged before the cameras even rolled. She clutched a tissue like it was a lifeline, her hands trembling as she tried to steady her breath. I never wanted this, she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought if I just loved enough, prayed enough, begged enough, this family could stay together. But as she spoke, viewers could see it. Her grief wasn't only for the family. It was for her position, her identity, her throne as the favorite. Because Robyn wasn't just losing a family. She was losing her power. And then the producers asked the question that split her wide open. Robyn, did you know about the email? Did Cody talk to you about it? Her eyes darted away. She stammered. She tried to redirect. But silence filled the air. And in that silence, a truth revealed itself without needing to be said. Meri's confessional came next. For years, Meri's seat had been filled with carefully measured words, quiet defenses of Cody, or soft whispers of pain that rarely became full truths. But not this time. This time her eyes were steady. Her voice calm. For so long I thought silence made me strong. That staying loyal no matter what was my identity. But silence isn't strength. It's erasure. And I refused to disappear. The words landed like stone. The internet lit up. Fans who had pitied Meri for years now applauded her courage. She wasn't just speaking against Cody. She was reclaiming her voice after decades of suppression. And in that moment the contrast between the two women couldn't be sharper. Robyn unraveling under the weight of exposure, Meri rising quietly from the ashes. Janelle's confessional was raw, unfiltered. She spoke of Garrison and Gabriel, of the wounds that never healed between father and sons. Her voice cracked with anger, grief, and something else, resolve. I begged him to show up. I begged him to just be a father. And he couldn't. Not for me. Not for them. No. Now he wants us to pity him. I can't do it anymore. Christine, radiant but fierce, didn't hold back either. She looked directly into the camera, her voice sharp but steady. Cody thinks he's the victim. He's not. He made choices. And those choices broke this family. We didn't leave him, he left us long before we walked away. By the time Cody took the chair, the air in the studio was already thick with truth, too heavy for him to manipulate. His jaw clenched, his eyes blazing, his hands cutting the air with furious gestures. They're lying, he shouted. They're rewriting history. They're making me look like some kind of monster when all I ever did was try to lead this family. But the more he ranted, the more it became clear. He wasn't defending himself. He was unraveling. His words came fast, scattered, emotional, unhinged. Viewers at home could see it. This wasn't leadership. This was desperation. And when producers pushed him, asking about the email, asking about favoritism, asking why his children were so estranged, he snapped. I don't have to answer that. I don't have to explain myself to anyone. The camera didn't flinch. It captured every vein in his forehead, every drop of spit as he screamed, every ounce of rage that had once been hidden behind polished confessionals. And in that moment millions of viewers saw the truth. Cody wasn't a misunderstood patriarch. He was a man consumed by his own pride, collapsing live on camera. Meanwhile, outside the studio the fan base was exploding. Reddit threads raged. TikTok edits went viral. Twitter hashtags like #FireCody, #TeamChristine, and #BreakingFreeSword. Petitions began circulating, thousands of signatures demanding TLC cut Cody and Robyn from the show entirely and launch a spin-off featuring Christine, Janelle, and Meri. Comments flooded TLC's social media. We're done watching Cody scream. Give us the women's story. They're the heart of the show. And quietly behind the cameras, producers listened. Emails buzzed. Calls were made. A phrase began to circulate in boardrooms, breaking free. A potential new title. A new direction. A story no longer about polygamy, no longer about Cody's control, but about liberation. About survival. About women who had been bound by one man's vision finally telling their own. But for now, the show still carried the name Sister Wives. And as season 20 unfolded, fans knew one thing for certain. It was no longer a story about unity. It was a story about collapse, betrayal, and the rising voices of women who refused to stay silent. Robyn's tears. Meri's calm strength. Janelle's righteous fury. Christine's sharp truth. And Cody, red-faced and raging, a man watching the empire he built crumble in front of millions. The family was gone. The dream was dead. And what came next was revolution. The cameras may have stopped rolling in the studio that day, but the storm did not. If anything, it grew louder once the lights dimmed. Inside TLC's offices, executives huddled in long, tense meetings, replaying footage from season 20. Cody's red-faced rants. Robyn's tearful spirals. Meri's shocking calm. Janelle's searing grief. Christine's truth spoken without hesitation. It was raw. It was unfiltered. It was no longer a reality show. It was a reckoning. One executive reportedly put it bluntly during a closed-door meeting. We can't keep selling the story of sister wives when the sisters have walked away. The audience isn't buying Cody's narrative anymore. They're here for the women. And that became the turning point. Whispers leaked. A new name floated through the halls. Breaking free. Rebrand. Reset. A story not about polygamy, not about a man holding wives together through faith and control, but about women reclaiming themselves after decades of silence. Christine's joy. Janelle's resilience. Meri's rebirth. Even the voices of the children. Logan, Michael T., Leon, Maddie, Gabriel, demanding truth and healing. For the first time in over a decade, the story was moving on. And Cody wasn't the center of it. Meanwhile, in Flagstaff, life began to look different. Christine returned to Utah with David by her side, her home filled with laughter and the energy of a new chapter. Janelle poured her energy into her children, fiercely present, fiercely protective, determined to show them stability after years of chaos. Meri, quietly but firmly, took steps into independence, her B&B becoming a symbol not just of survival but of self. And Cody? The cameras captured him walking across Coyote Pass one last time. Alone. The wind whipping across the barren land, the stakes marking nothing but broken promises. He muttered to himself, the words clipped and bitter, "They'll regret this. They'll come crawling back."